going to be talking about crochet clothes, everything crochet clothes. You know, so many times I've followed the patterns, I've done the tutorials, and still I will not wear that piece out. I will not touch it. It will sit in a ball in my closet or the trash can because I did not think about these little things that go into making pieces that are wearable. Hello, welcome to my channel. I'm Bells Creates, where I talk about and demonstrate all things crochet. How to measure your pieces and measuring your body so that you can make it your own. If you do the same measurements as someone else, you're not going to always get the piece to fit your exact body. And I feel like that's what crocheting is making things for specifically yourself and uniquely your own. So it's important to keep in mind how to measure your own body. So different methods of doing this is going to be with a tape measure. You could just measure against your body, but it's important to know the correct methods of getting the correct measurements, because you might think, oh, for my waist I'll just wrap it around any part of my body, but the waist specifically is supposed to be the smallest part around your body, and your hips has to be the largest part around your hips, not just any type of measurement. I'm going to link down below in my description videos. I'm going to have a bunch of videos that I'm going to be talking about throughout this discussion. I'm going to be linking them all down below and putting lots of stuff in my Amazon storefront of the things that I use that help me, such as the tape measure. But I'm going to be putting different words in the video so I don't have to keep saying it. You could use a tape measure to get the correct measurements, and then you can also use the starting chain yourself. When you're crocheting pieces, you're always going to be starting off with your chain, and this chain probably 9 times out of 10 has relevance to the size of the piece. So for example, I'm making a sweater. The chain that I did underneath I did 70, decided how wide this piece is going to be. So I just put it against myself, and you could, with a tight top, you could wrap it around yourself and see if the chain is a good measurement for you. Or also you could use an old clothing that you already own, and just measure the chain or tape measure against that if you don't use your body. So for example, I'm making a sweater. I know I want it to be oversized. If I wanted to be the size of this hoodie, I would grab the width of this, half of the width, and then just line my piece up against it so that I could see how wide I want it to be. The hook and yarn size relationship. So for example, if I'm making a top and I don't want to be able for it to be stretchy, I don't want it to be thick material, I don't want it to be see-through, then I would use a smaller hook and weight for yarn. Typically when you're crocheting clothes, you're going to be using weight for yarn. This is the most common yarn that you're going to be using for basically everything. So this is the yarn that I'm using right now. It's weight for yarn. I would say a small hook is considered to be like a 3.5 or lower, or even like I'd say 4. 4 is more medium, but I'd say 3.5 millimeter or lower. These are gonna get you really small stitches because the hook is so small, and it's going to make it more opaque. I know what this word means and I know how to spell it, but I don't know how to say it. So if I'm saying it wrong, I apologize. So I really suggest that if you're making tops or even pants, because you don't want pants to be see-through. That's just not nice. Weight for yarn with a 4 millimeter hook, which I would consider is like medium. I'd say 4 millimeter to 5 millimeter is more the most common medium hook size. That is going to get you right in the middle where it's not going to be super see-through, it's not going to be super tight, but it's not going to be super loose. You can get away with this with most pieces if you want to use it as like a regular top, but just be where you have to wear something underneath because it still will be see-through. And then you have the bigger hook with, I would say 5 and above. I mean, typically when I'm crocheting sweaters, I'll use 6 to 6.5. Like this is a 6.5 millimeter, but I've used 7, I've used 8. I haven't done anything above that, I don't think, because your stitches are gonna get super loose and they're gonna be super see-through. So like even with this, like you can see my skin underneath it. So you're obviously going to need to have something underneath. So this is good for sweaters, cover-ups, anything that you know you're going to be wearing something underneath, because there's a pretty good chance you're going to see like all of it. Like if I'm wearing a top underneath the sweater, you're going to see the whole top, the color of the top, everything. The fabric stretchiness, so I like call this fabric because I feel like that's what we're making fabric for our clothes. You want to think about the fabric stretch. So if you're making a top that you're going to tie in the back, you want to realize that when you tie it, it's going to stretch. Like you can see it's not super stretchy, but enough to, like, if you want this to be tight on your body, you don't want to make it too big. You want to, even as you go through, stretch it so you can see that this is a good width. And even depending on the stitch that you're using, I went through this once where I crocheted my grandmother a cardigan and we measured it. We did the starting chain. It was all good, had the measurements. And then I used double crochet. It doubled in size and she's a small lady. So this cardigan was huge on her and I had to restart the whole thing. So as you go along, you want to keep in mind that it's going to stretch. It might even, the stitch itself could increase the width and length, the measurements of the piece. And on top of that, when you are blocking or steaming your piece, it's also going to stretch, but we're going to talk more about that later. So you just want to keep checking up on yourself as you go. See-throughness is also very relevant, but there are different ways to go around this. For example, if you don't want it to be super see-through, then maybe learn new stitches. So single crochet is like your basic one that is not going to be super see-through. A lot of these stitches, even though they're going to take more time because the faster ones obviously are going to be a lot more see-through, but you can also use pretty stitches that aren't as see-through. So there's different ones, like I know the moss stitch is a pretty one that is not see-through, so that's good for tops, pants, or even like thick sweaters that you don't want wind to get through. And then also the linen stitch is also a pretty one. Yeah, so I'd say those three are good ones, but you could definitely look up a lot more to see, like, oh, I can't see anything through this would be a great stitch for the top. It's a good thing to keep in mind what stitch you utilize because each stitch has different see-throughness. Okay, coming back to this, blocking and steaming, I feel like this was a game changer. I used to make all my sweaters and crochet pieces and not block and steam them. I would never wear them because I was like, oh my god, this looks just so thick and it's not moving and it's just stuck. When you block and steam it, it's gonna come, the fibers are gonna loosen. Really specifically talking about acrylic yarn, but the fibers are going to loosen and then it's going to be more flowy and like oversized and just a lot more comfortable to wear. When you make your crochet pieces, there's different methods of blocking, which I don't really have the space to do the traditional method of blocking. So I just bought a steamer off of Amazon and hung it up in my room and just would steam it after I'm done making the piece. And the pieces come out so beautifully. But once again, I keep in mind because I have steamed a piece before where I crocheted myself a cardigan and the sleeves they fit me before, but then after I steamed it, the fibers loosened so much that like it was huge. Like the piece itself fit me, but the sleeves were very oversized, which was fine because I could just tuck them back. It still is cute, but you want to keep that in mind that, okay, maybe I'll make the sleeves a little shorter because when I steam it later or block it later, it's going to loosen. Another thing that I've also done, I realized like when I was cleaning my crochet cardigans that if I put them in the dryer, like you don't want to do this too much because it may make pieces frizzy, which we'll talk about later as well. But if you just throw it in the dryer like once for a little bit with heat, it'll just also get the same thing done where it just becomes a lot more flowy and it's just so much nicer. And I know there's so many TikToks of like before and after steaming and you just see the difference and it's so nice. Sewing the pieces together, this is a very important part. I'm picky where I don't like to be able to tell where I could sew. Like I want it to look like it's all one piece. That's why on my channel you see a lot of one panel tutorials because I don't like seeing where I sewed. But like even on these clothes, like you can see where this was sewed, but it's more like subtle. I feel like it's important that when you're hand sewing all your pieces together, a lot of tops are going to be one panel where like you only have to crochet one thing. When it comes to sweaters, cardigans, all stuff like that, it still can be done one panel on my channel, but like you still need to sew them together nonetheless. And it's important that you really take the time to sew it correctly. You don't want to pull it too tight. You don't want to grab random loops when you're going side to side. You definitely need to invest in a yarning needle. You can slip stitch, but once again, like I said, on the outside, it's more obvious that you sewed it together. This is not like, this could just be a preference where, okay, you're fine with how it looks when you're sewing, but even then, if you are slip stitching, really take your time to make sure it all lines up, because I've been lazy where I made the whole piece and I'm just like, okay, I'm done with this. So I would just lazily sew it together, and then it would just be like uneven and just bunched in different places, and that's not cute. We did all this hard work and then you're not gonna even wear it. So what I suggest for that is stitch markers, making sure everything lines up. Watch different videos, learn methods on the best way to sew. I even found out that so I get that hidden sewn look is I sew on the right side out. So like you can't tell where I sewed. I just make sure everything lines up the part I can see and control. I don't pull it too tight, not too loose. Because oftentimes, I mean, when it comes to sweaters and stuff, you're not gonna really be tugging on it. If you are pulling something tight, then you definitely wanna sew it tight. Not most sweaters are body tight. Like it's not gonna squeeze against your body, so it's not gonna be stretched. So it doesn't need to be sewed that tight. Like it just needs to be put together. It's important to take the time to sew your pieces nice and neat, and like you can pretend like you're a seamstress making a dress for the queen. Like I really romanticize. It's actually one of my favorite parts, I would say, is sewing it all together, because it's just putting it all together. It's beautiful. It's amazing. Finishing it neatly. This is still something I'm learning, because I would rather crochet a blanket from Matt Everest than weave in my ends. Weaving in my ends is such a struggle, but this is what really makes a difference between I can wear this piece out, I can sew this piece, I can give this piece to other people. They can't tell where I stopped crocheting, and this is just a crochet piece I made. It's really important that after you're done crocheting and you're cutting, you cut the ends, that it's nice and long so that later you can sew it, because you're supposed to sew it like using the yarn needle, go in, back and forth 3 times and then cut it, and then it's good to go. You're not supposed to just tuck it in a random place, because it probably will make an appearance later. But this is a good habit to start, is cutting your ends long and taking time to weave in your ends. I mean, I know it's really crazy for some pieces. For some clothes and tops, it's not that crazy. You probably have like, I'll say like 6 ends, and even sometimes you can crochet over them throughout the process, which is also so nice. Make sure you're weaving in your ends. There's lots of methods and different ways to weave it in your ends, but just take the time to do them. Weaving in your ends is so important, and it really makes a difference in a piece, giving it that nice professional look. After you have made the piece your job, your work is not done. After your 20 hours of crocheting, you want to make sure that you take care of the piece once it is done. You don't want to just throw it on a pile of clothes on the ground. You don't want to crumble in a ball. Even sometimes, even if you think you're doing the right thing, you don't even want to hang it up, because the pieces can stretch out the fibers. And like after this gets hung up for so long, it's going to be stretched like this. And so your sweaters are going to have like huge shoulders, and it won't be as nice. And then on top of that, you want to be careful about how you're cleaning the clothes, and make sure you're paying attention to the correct way to clean and wash acrylic yarn. You know, after a few times, you don't want to keep throwing it in the dryer, because like it'll fray, it'll be frizzy, and we don't want that. We want these clothes that we put lots of hard work in to last a long time. But that is all I have for you guys today. And I hope you guys can make some beautiful pieces, because I feel like that's the end goal. Like now with this generation of crocheting, we love to make our own clothes and to have slow fashion, not fast fashion, slow fashion. Please give me a like and subscribe, and check out my other videos if you are new. Let me know anything else that you guys want in the comments, because I always could use more ideas. Thank you so much for watching.